You guys ever feel like that? You just don't want to go to work, just want to bang on the drum all day. So, the good news was that this week, K2 staff, we had the week off after Christmas. So we were all excited and we were on vacation and going to hang out until about 48 hours ago for my bride and I, Clarissa. So we're going out to dinner with friends, and I was shutting the blinds to the house right before we got to dinner. And I step on the carpet right below the blind, and it's sopping wet. I was like, Clarissa, we have a problem. She runs in, she's like, what's going on? Come to find out, there's ice on our roof. It's leaking through the walls, down into the carpet, and seeping through. It's like, the biggest nightmare of my life. And so I spent the last 48 hours or so scraping ice and all kinds of stuff. Well, yesterday morning, we're sitting at breakfast, and I'm sitting there eating my bowl of cereal, and I look out, and there's mouse droppings on the kitchen floor. I'm just like, oh my gosh, not only do we have a leaky roof, we have mice, and so get the mouse traps, get those all set. We go upstairs to our bedroom, and we're folding clothes and putting them away, and I look at our window, to our bedroom window, and the side of it right here, there's like water coming in there too, and I'm like, oh gosh, so not only is it downstairs, it's upstairs too. Biggest nightmare. And so I was like, Clarissa, I'm just going to go check my email. And so I go and I check my email, and it's all good. And I said, well, I want to see how much money we spent on Christmas. And so I pull up our credit card statement, and there's charges on there that we didn't do. Somebody stole my credit card numbers and is buying stuff left and right. And you're like, how can this be? All these things at one time. And so I'm like, Clarissa, I'm going to bed, okay? She's like, Ryan, I'm going to the grocery store. And so I go lay down in bed, and I'm just like, it has to stop, doesn't it? Nothing else can go wrong. And so Clarissa comes in from the grocery store. She's like, hey, Ryan, you're going to want to look at the garage. I was like, you're joking. She's like, no, come in. Come look. And so our garage is not finished, and there's this like drywall tape, and it's coming off, and fluid is seeping through it. No idea what this is. And so I'm like, are you kidding me? And so I can't reach it. So I have to climb up on my car, and so I'm touching it, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I slip and fall on my car, and I go from my car to my garage door, and I hit myself in that place where it hurts guys to talk for a while, and I'm just like hobbling around. I'm like, this is unstinking believable. I was like, Clarissa, there cannot be one more thing that goes wrong. And so she goes, Ryan, I'll just make you lunch. Everything will be good. You just relax. And so she makes lunch, and we're sitting at the kitchen counter. And I go, Clarissa, do you hear water running? And she's like, yeah, I do. And I go upstairs, our toilet broke. And I was like, this is unbelievable. 48 hours of hell, okay? So I've been through. And I started thinking, I thought, man, there's a message that God put on my heart for this morning since a while back, and I really do believe there's an enemy out there that doesn't want a lot of us to hear it. And he has power over crazy stuff, and I think as a result of all of these things going wrong, I think that he doesn't want you to hear this message today. And so my prayer last night and this morning is that God's words would speak truth to your head and to your heart today. So I'm just going to shoot up a quick prayer. Would you guys join me in a prayer? Hey, Jesus, thanks for who you are. Thanks for working in and through our lives. And God, I pray that your words would reign true today in our hearts. May my words go in one ear and out the other, but may your word penetrate our souls like it never has before. I pray that 08 would be a different year for many of us. Thanks for continuing to work. And Lord, we promise to praise you through the good times and the bad. So God, whether my house crashes down or whatever, I'm still going to give you glory and honor and love. In your son's name, amen. Awesome. So talking about living for the weekend. You guys ever feel like that's your case? You just live for the weekend? I know for me it happens all the time. So Clarissa and I have this tradition for Saturday mornings. We wake up a little bit late, and we either make blueberry muffins, pancakes, or we hop in the car and go to Einstein Brothers Bagels, and we get it, and we sit at our kitchen counter, and we eat, and we talk, and we laugh about the week, and we tell good stories and all that stuff. It's one of those traditions that is ingrained into our souls, and we just love it. We're together, and so if somebody asks me to meet for breakfast on Saturday mornings, I'm always like, no way. And that's the time for my bride. One of the things I live for. And then after breakfast, I usually crawl onto the couch, flip on the remote control, watch a little college football. One of the things that I live for, and it's like, yes. If you don't know, in a week and one day, the national championship, Ohio State and LSU play. One of the things I've been living for the last couple of weeks or so. Way, way exciting. Something else I live for all the time is movies. So So when the latest movies are coming out, there's this new movie called Vantage Point. I don't know if you guys have seen it with Dennis Quaid, Forrest Whitaker, where the president gets assassinated. Everybody has a different angle view as to what actually happened. So it's coming out in February. It looks fabulous. Marked it in my calendar. I'm like, Clarissa, we got to go opening night. I live for the latest Apple gear, whether it's the iPhone or the computer. I'm just like, dude, I got to get my hands on that and own it and play with it and touch it and all that stuff. And then the other thing that I live for, as of recently, is a little baby girl that's brewing inside my wife. So she's due in May. We get to meet her. We named her already. Her name's going to be Brennan Hope. And so cannot wait to meet this girl. And I wake up at night and I'm just like, I can't wait to meet her. If only 5 months would come. And what happens is I fail to engage in the moment because I'm so anxiously awaiting her arrival. And all the time, I'm living for something other than what I'm supposed to be living for, than engaging in the moment. And it's made me think about a couple summers ago, I got tickets to Puerto Rico. So we lived in Indiana at the time. I was online. I found tickets from Detroit, Michigan to San Juan, Puerto Rico, $250. I know what you're thinking. You're like, yeah, I'd go for that. So Clarissa and I went. I call her at work. I'm like, babe, these aren't going to last long. $250, vacation this summer. She's like, I'm all over it. Let's do it. So I get us a hotel, $59 on the beach, the Hyatt. Okay, I price-lined it. Amazing trip. I booked it all in February, and we went in June. But the problem was this vacation consumed my life for the next 5 months. Okay, every free chance we got, I was like going to Borders and flipping through the magazines and all the little books and like, where should we go? What should we eat? What should we do when we're in Puerto Rico? And it totally consumed my life. And anytime something remotely bad would happen, I'd be like, Clarissa, don't worry about it. We'll be in Puerto Rico in 3 months, you know? But that was our mentality. And so I remember coming home on the plane and sitting there and thinking, I'm like, man, I spent 5 months thinking and planning this trip, and now it's over. I thought, man, did I waste a lot of conversations and time that maybe God was going to teach me some stuff, and there were conversations to be had and lessons to be learned when I was so consumed with Puerto Rico. And I just thought, man, I don't want to do that anymore with my life. You know, I'm tired of being distracted by the wrong thing. I don't know where I get this from, but for some reason, I don't know if it's the movies I watch or the people that taught me how my life skills or the books I read, but sometimes I engage in the wrong things, and I get focused by them and sidetracked. I'm just like, what in the world happened to me? And this week, I was reading this book by this minister. He's a full-time pastor, works for a church out of Oklahoma, and he says this. He says, I'm a full-time minister, but I'm a part-time follower of Jesus. So he's a full-time minister for the church, but he's a part-time follower of Jesus, if he's going to be completely honest. And I thought to myself, man, I don't even feel like a part-time follower of Jesus. I'm maybe like quarter-time, eighth-time follower of Jesus. You know, when it's convenient and life is good, I'm like, yeah, I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of Jesus. But when stuff gets hairy or, you know, I get busy or distracted or I'm consumed with LSU football or my daughter that's on the way or all these crazy things of life, it's like one of the first things to go. Do you guys ever feel like that from time to time? Where you're just like, man, I'm supposed to be in love passionately with this God of the universe, but somewhere along the lines I've missed it. Maybe you're here this morning and you grew up in church ever since you were this big, and you know all the Bible verses and the stories, and you know the songs to sing, and it's penetrated your mind. If someone was going to ask you a spiritual question, you can give them an answer back. But maybe for some reason, you've said, man, did I miss it along the way? Because I just don't feel it in my heart like I'm supposed to. Maybe that's you today, and you're like, man, somewhere along the lines, my paths got crossed or something. Because if this is all that life has to offer, I am missing out. Maybe that's you this morning, or maybe it's your first time ever at a church. You know, maybe it's the first time you've ever stepped foot in church, and people sit down to pray, and you do one of those like where you close your eyes and you're like peeking, you're like, what's really going on? And people talk about encountering this living God. And you begin to think to yourself, man, are these people schizophrenic? You know, is there something wrong with them that they have this encounter relationship thing with Jesus? I don't get it. Maybe you're a new Christian. Okay, and a couple years ago, you discovered Christ, and he came into your life, and it was exhilarating, and it was thrilling, and he had control. And somewhere along the way, it's began to fizzle out just a little bit. And you're like, man, if I could just get back to where it used to be. Maybe that's you today. Or maybe you are a passionate follower of Jesus who has this growing, thriving, intimate relationship with him. You don't feel like you have to fake it. You don't feel like a part-time follower of Jesus. If that's you, then props to you. Man, that is awesome. And keep up the hard work. And there's one more category. It's a category where is all we do as it pertains to our relationship with Jesus is we serve. We serve and we do. And anytime our phone rings, whether it's somebody from K2 or it's K2, we answer it and we're like, I'll be right there. I'll take care of it. And that consists of our whole entire relationship with Jesus. Anytime somebody needs something, they call me. And if that's you today and you've missed those encounters with Jesus, man, we got to get back to where we encounter him firsthand. So anybody ever feel that way? You guys ever feel that way in one of those categories? Well, the good news is we're not the first people throughout all of history to feel that way. There's people time and time again in the scriptures that felt that way. Let me tell you about this guy, John. You guys know the disciple John. He followed Jesus, one of his closest disciples. He was one of the three that Jesus was real intimate with. Well, all the other disciples are dead. Okay, John's still alive, and he's exiled to an island of Patmos. Okay, almost like a jail sentence. So go out there, John. And so John's out there, and he has these living encounters with Jesus. Jesus shows up firsthand, and he tells John how to live, some things that are coming. And at one point, Jesus wants to say, hey, John, I have 7 churches throughout Asia Minor. He said, I want to write a letter to each one of them. I want you to write it, but I'm going to tell you what to say. And so John takes notes, and he writes down firsthand what people need to know in order from their words from Jesus. Jesus is telling John to them. So Jesus has direct communication with these people. The one I want to talk about today is the church of Laodicea. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but it's this cool city. So they don't do churches like we did it. So the church would be the whole city. So there would be a Salt Lake church. There would not be a K2 and a South Mountain and the Rock Church. It would be Salt Lake City Church. And so that's what it was. It was the church of Laodicea. And so this is Jesus' instructions to these people. And 2 quick things you got to know about them. The people of Laodicea, they are very wealthy. Okay? They had everything that they needed. The second thing is that there was an earthquake 40 years before this letter was written. Whole town is destroyed. They built it back up themselves. They had no outside assistance, no help. And so they just took care of it, and they made it right. And so these people were smart, were very resourceful, and were very wealthy. And so here's what Jesus has to say to this church of Laodicea. It's found in Revelation 3:15 in your Bible. He says, I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. Jesus says, you say, I am rich, I have acquired wealth and do not need a thing, but you do not realize that you are a wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. I counsel you to buy from me gold refined in the fire so that you can become rich, and white clothes to wear so that you can cover your shameful nakedness. Did you catch the first part? Jesus says, hey, you're neither hot for me or cold. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to spit you out of my mouth because you're lukewarm. And the reason it was significant, this was like a slap in the face to this church, was that they got their water. They couldn't pipe it in themselves. They had to get it from the town north of them. So that every time they wanted water, they had to travel north and get their water. And by the time they got their water back to Laodicea, guess what? It was lukewarm. And nobody liked lukewarm water because anytime you go to a wedding banquet, a feast, a religious service, water was always really hot or really cold. If you gave someone lukewarm water, it was an insult to their face. It'd be like the biggest slap to say, oh, you don't care about me. You would serve me lukewarm drinks. And so Jesus says to this church, you guys are lukewarm, the thing that everybody in the town of Laodicea despises. I think the people heard that and they're like, oh my goodness, what in the world are we going to do? If you're like me, you read that and you're like, man, I don't want to be lukewarm. I want to be different. And we begin to say, I'm going to change, I'm going to serve, I'm going to do more, I'm going to do something. What happens is tomorrow comes, and we forget a little bit about it, and we start thinking about the movie that's coming out or the football game or whatever it is, and we forget that we weren't going to be lukewarm anymore, and so we start to just alter that just a little bit. And then we think, oh, yeah, that was last week. I'll move on. And we forget that God had said these instructions to the people and that we had to change the way that we live. And so I started thinking this week, gang, what if I lived in Laodicea? Okay, transform me back 2,000 years ago. If I lived in Laodicea, could I rise up in the midst of everybody else, and say, you know what? It doesn't matter what my friends do. It doesn't matter what my family does or my coworkers or my pastors. I'm going to be a person who follows Jesus and who's hot for Jesus, who's not cold, who's not lukewarm, but I'm hot for Jesus. And I thought, man, what if I treated my wife the way that I treat Jesus right now? So imagine this. Our anniversary comes around, and I tell Clarissa, hey, babe, tomorrow's our anniversary. We got some stuff planned. So I wake up in the morning, and I rush off to work. Don't even say happy anniversary or a word to her because I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff to do. So I go to work. I'm on my way home, and I see one of those vendors on the side of the road that has flowers, roses for sale. So I stop by. I grab them. I'm like, hey, Clarissa, these were half off. I got them for you. And I say, hey, I went to Walmart today on my lunch break, and I saw the anniversary section, so I just picked out a card. Here it is. I didn't have time to sign it, but here you go. Happy anniversary. I hope it goes well. Then you're like, well, it's our anniversary. I guess we should go out to dinner. So I say, hey, I'm going to choose the place, but you can have any soft drink on the menu, okay? Whatever you want, we'll get to drink. And we have to cut the dinner a little bit short because there's a great football game on tonight. And I was thinking maybe you could make me my favorite dessert. I could polish that off, and then I got to go to bed early, though, because I have to work early in the morning. So happy anniversary, babe. If I treated my wife like that, she would sit me down and be like, Ryan, this has to end. Why is it that I treat Jesus that way all the time, and it's no big deal? 2 weeks go by, and I don't connect with him or spend any time or even a thought, and it's no big deal. Unless I need something. Something goes wrong, and I'm like, Lord, fix my house, or whatever the case. But until I need something, everything is fine and hunky-dory. I think that we're missing it a little bit. And it's not about serving more and working harder and doing this and that. It's about experiencing this God. Jesus gives further instructions to the church of Laodicea in verse 19. Here's what Jesus has to say. Those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. So be earnest and repent. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with him, and he with me. Notice the first part. He says, those whom I love. I think if he took that church at Laodicea, he'd grab the people and he'd say, hey, I want you to know first and foremost that I love you and that I'm building character in you. That's what this verse says. He says, hey, I'm knocking on your door. I just want to come in and dine with you and be with you. And I automatically thought back to my Saturday mornings with Clarissa, where we sit at the breakfast table, the counter, and we just have this intimate dialogue, fun, loving relationship together. And that's exactly what God wants from the people of Laodicea and exactly what he wants from our life. And so what's the answer if we're ever going to make it? It's to let him in and to be in love with him. What is it like to be in love? Do you guys remember? When every thought that you have is captivated by this person. Before you go to bed at night, when you wake up in the morning, you just always think about him. You get a free time at work and you send him a text message, hey, I love you, I was thinking about you. Your thoughts are for that person. You want to do whatever you can do to bring that person joy. I bring Clarissa in bed, breakfast in bed sometimes. I leave her notes around the house. If I'm in a store and I see something she'd love, I grab it for her. Whatever I can do to make her happy, that's what I do. And not because I'm supposed to and I'm her husband, but because I love her that much. And when she has joy, I have joy. That's what it's like to be in love. And sometimes when we're walking next to each other and she reaches out and she grabs my hand and she holds it, I just get those tingles where you're like, oh, this is good. Why? Because that's what love is. I remember we went to Aruba for our honeymoon. And so I booked our place at this hotel where we had a private island. So everybody in the hotel had this little island that nobody else could get onto. And so we're laying in our rafts in this private island, and it's sunset, and the water's like 90 degrees. One of those like magical moments if you could just push pause, and then when something bad like your house happens, you could just push play and be like, oh, it's not so bad now, is it? But so we're having one of those moments, and I look over at my bride, and it's like, babe, this is one of the most beautiful, breathtaking moments of our lives. It couldn't get any better or richer than this. She's like, I agree. She's like, Rye, I'm kind of thirsty. So you know what I did? I crawled out of my raft, swam up to the beach, went to the little pool bar, brought her a drink, and I said, here you go, babe, whatever you want, I got you. And every time we'd go out to dinner, I'd call and I'd be like, we want the most romantic booth in the place. I'd open every door for her. I'd serve her. I'd do whatever. I'd bring flowers. Why? Because we were in love. And that's what you do. Why is it that as it pertains to Jesus, we're just like, all right, fine. I'll serve. I'll show up. I'll go to church. I'll write my offering. But I don't really want to, but I'll do it because that's what the scriptures say. And I guess that's what I have to do. I just started thinking, man, I want to be a person that passionately loves God when no one else does. To be a person that rises up and says, I've had enough. I'm tired of being lukewarm. I want to be in love and engaged with this Jesus. And so what's it going to take to encounter this God, to have this intimate relationship with him? It's an encounter. Okay, it's where we experience him firsthand. That's what I do with my wife. I have time together where it's intimate and deep. It's not where I'm out, washing her car and changing the oil, which is part of it, but it's where I experience her, and it's rich and it's real. And I was reading through the book of Genesis a while back, and I was in the genealogy. If you guys ever got there, and you're like, all right, this is kind of weird. It's like Adam begot Adam, and this person lived 600 years. It's one of those times you're like, maybe I'll just skip it, thumb through the next section. And I was like, I'll just read it. Maybe there's something interesting in there. Plus, we're supposed to read the Bible, the whole thing, so I'll read the genealogy. So I was thumbing through the genealogy, and I came across Genesis 5:24. It's a story of a man named Enoch. Here's what it says about him. Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. So I sat there and I read that, and I read it a couple of times, and I thought, Enoch walked with God. And I pictured God and Enoch hand in hand, walking through the neighborhoods and through the mountains and along the beach and all these things. I thought, man, he had an intimate, diving deep relationship with Jesus, with God. And that's what Enoch had. And I thought, man, what would it be like if I had that? I looked up the word walked in the Hebrew back in the day, and it means fellowship and obedience. When you think of fellowship, again, it's time together. It's community. It's rich. It's the time at the kitchen counter with the bagels. That's what he had with God. And he had obedience, where if God asked him to do something, he was going to do it. And so I started thinking, man, my genealogy someday, when Brennan, my little daughter, who's inside my wife, when she stands up at my funeral someday, what do I want her to say about me? Enoch was remembered for walking with God. And I thought, I want Brennan to stand up and say about me that I was a fabulous dad, that I was a great husband, and that I walked with God. That's what I want her to say about me. That's what I want to be remembered for. And I got mad at myself because I'm like, why are those things so hard for me to do? It's hard for me to be a good husband a lot of times. I don't even know what it's like to raise kids, but I can't imagine it's easy. And I'm terrible at walking with God. If you were to stand up and say what my life's about right now, you'd probably say himself, college football, the latest Apple gear, and having the coolest stuff. Something like that. And that's exactly what I wouldn't want it to say. How many of us feel that way from time to time? We're like, man, I get so focused and so sidetracked on exactly the wrong thing. And so, gang, my desire for you and for your lives and for myself is that we would experience this God this next year, that we would passionately love God, even if no one else does it. That we'd be people who rise up and say, I am tired of being lukewarm, but I'm going to encounter him firsthand. And that we would walk with God in a new way where we keep it fresh and exciting and rich and real and intimate. Because I think if 08 goes by and we've done it, we've wasted another year, we're going to look back and be like, man, what was I missing? Why did I miss out? And so maybe you're here this morning and you're not a Christian. You don't know what it means to experience this Jesus guy. And maybe you got off at the wrong track station. Maybe somebody dragged you here. But I want you to know that it is not by coincidence that you're here. God has your days orchestrated and planned out from your very first day to the last day that you're going to be here on this earth. And as you come into this place, I want you to experience this community. Grab the people around you, go to lunch, join an on-ramp, a small group, some of the ministries that we do, and experience this community and see how rich and great it is. But know this, Jesus is the only thing you'll ever find in your life that will bring you true satisfaction. Other stuff will last a day, a month, a year, if you're really lucky, but Jesus is the only thing that will come in and quench your soul like nothing else and give you the long-term satisfaction that you're longing for. But take your time. Jesus isn't going anywhere. Don't let anybody force you into anything. And when you're ready, remember that Jesus is standing at the door knocking. And you know what you have to do? Just open the door and say, Lord, come into my life like you never have before. And begin to dine with him and be together. And it's not about doing for him. It's about just being with him. Maybe you're here this morning and you're down on life. my last 48 hours has been your last 48 weeks. It's just been one of those seasons where you're like, man, could one more bad thing happen? What I want you to do this morning is know that Jesus wants to take you by your head. He wants to look you in your eyes and he says, hey, I love you. And not only do I love you, I have a plan for your life. A plan that's greater than your biggest expectations. One that's going to give you life to the full. That's what he wants to say to you. He wants to grab you and embrace you and say, hey, I just want to be with you this next year. Let's make this a year to be remembered. And so if that's you this morning, man, I'm sorry for all the pain and the hurt that you're going through. And so is God. This year, this week, I want you to try to encounter him firsthand. Grab your scriptures and head up to the mountains. Open them up. Keep it real. Go for a walk with God. Do whatever it takes to encounter this living God. And maybe you're here this morning and you're a passionate follower of Jesus. You've committed your life to him and you're going to follow him all the days of your life. My encouragement is keep it fresh. The same way that you do with a marriage. You can't go to the same restaurant every single Friday night, but you have to spice it up and go on adventures and do various activities and be intimate and real and deep. You have to do that with Jesus. And so if that means downloading some new worship music, throwing it on your iPod and heading up to the mountains, go for it. If it means grabbing a blank journal, and just write until your heart's content. If it means going and grabbing your guitar and sitting out under a tree, it's a little cold for that now, but still a good idea. Do it. Keep it intimate with Jesus because you only get one chance this year. And then I thought, man, if that's you, think of a person in your life. Have them come to mind who needs to encounter this living God. When you picture their head or their face or their body or whatever it is you picture about this person, ask yourself this question. What can I do today that this person can take one step closer to him? Is there something that I can do to help bridge the gap between this person and God, where they can begin to encounter him firsthand? Who is it in your life? And do whatever it takes in order for that to happen. And so, gang, imagine if every single one of us in this room began to encounter this living God in 2008. I think we would be totally full of him. We wouldn't look to the weekends to satisfy us or to great football or the pleasure or the entertainment that we so often run to. And then when we go on great vacations and we get cool stuff, it makes life that much better. But we wouldn't look to it to satisfy our souls because the only thing that will ever satisfy us is Jesus. And so this year in 2008, may we passionately love God when no one else does. That's my heart's desire for myself and for you guys. And so that someday when people are leaving our genealogy or our obituaries, they're like, man, that was a person that encountered this God firsthand. And they were full of life. Because I'm tired of having these empty years where I'm like, yeah, it was an okay year. I want to have one of those years where it's like full of life and full of God, where it's like, man, I encountered him. Imagine if he spoke to us every day of our lives and he breathed life into us and said, hey, I believe in you and I love you and I'm shaping you into the person that I want you to be. I think we'd go about this life completely different. And so let's be people who encounter him this next year. Band, you guys can take your place. So we're going to switch it up. We're going to do some worship. And so my heart's desire is that our worship wouldn't be lukewarm for 1 second. That when we sing these songs, that we would mean them with our hearts and with our mouths. Sometimes when we're doing this music, the worship, I can't sing the songs because I'm like, I don't really mean I could sing of your love forever. I know it's probably true in my head, but I can't sing it in my heart because I really don't believe it. And so sometimes I say, Lord, I want to believe that I could sing of your love forever, or I pray that I could sing of your love forever. And gradually my heart begins to change. So if you can't sing them with a sincere heart, don't sing them. Pray them, or sit quiet and allow God to speak to you. But whatever it is, let's not give them lukewarm. Let's be hot for God this next year. And also, we're going to take our offering. This is one more chance where we get to give back to God, who so graciously pour out his blessings to us. Let's not let our offering be one of those times where we're like, fine, Bible says 10%, here you go, here's your 10%. But let's give with grateful heart, saying, Lord, you are so great to me. Here's just a little bit that I could give back to you. And if you're here today and you're a guest, don't feel any pressure. But if you want to give to a God who's been generous to you, feel free to give your best. And so my heart's desire during this worship time is that God would look down on this place from heaven and say, man, those people at K2 are a bunch of passionate followers for me. That he would smile big as a result of our worship. And he would say, there's not even a hint of people that are lukewarm there today. Those people are hot for me. Thank you, guys. Let's kick back and let's worship the Lord Almighty right now.